Okay, students, in the last session we discussed with regarding to connecting to databases. So these are all the slides that earlier that you have been viewed in your earlier video. This is how to connect to database. So using MySQL underscore query, we are connecting to databases. So in the previous steps we have discussed installing to XAMPP server and then invoking the XAMPP server into our system, and then after that running the XAMPP server, and then enter opening to PHP MyAdmin page. So all these slides that are discussed earlier using MySQLi underscore connecting to the database. So in the last session we completed up to creating the database. After creating the database, from this session we are starting with the session creating a table. So now the only query that we have been using with all these table creation, database creation, inserting values to the table, the only method that we need to remember is the MySQL underscore query. This is the only method that we need to remember for all the programs with regarding to PHP connecting to database. So this is the only method we are having. In this method we will be providing our SQL query and the connection object. Both these two arguments are supplied to the method MySQL underscore query. That method executes the given arguments. So now in order to create a table, after creating a database, now we need to create the table. So these steps are indicating creating the database. So host is the variable denoting the server system or denoting the local host. Username, providing username, providing password, and then we already created a database name and taking the database name into the variable. Now con is the variable which takes this is MySQL underscore connect is the method which is used in connecting to the database. This method returns a value that is either true or false, so that we are using a variable called con to store the return value by the method SQL connect. So using MySQL underscore connect, we will be connecting to the database. So this is the process involved in connecting to the database. Already these steps we have discussed in the previous sessions also. So this particular steps from PHP to echo, these are all connecting to the database. Now after making a successful connection, after making a successful creation of the database, what we are doing is we are creating a table. So what is the method we are using is we are using the method MySQL underscore query. As said earlier, this method needs two arguments. One is connection argument and the other one is SQL argument. So connection argument contains a connection to the database. SQL argument contains the SQL query. So this is the SQL argument. This SQL argument is provided with a query called create table. So if you see $SQL, so using SQL query create table name, and then providing the field values. With regarding to database, you have studied with the databases. In that database, how to create the tables. So how to create a table? Create table command. The syntax is create table name, and then argument, and then data type of that argument. Similarly here, create table name is emp5, id is the argument, and that data type of that argument is int, providing auto increment. So even though we are not supplying id, it will be goes on auto incrementing. And the next another column for the table is the name column, which is with the data type varchar 20. That means we will be entering the characters of length 20, and it should be not null. The name field should not be left blank. And then the next field is employee salary, which is an int type, not null, and the primary key. The significance of primary key is in order to avoid the duplicates, not allowing to enter the duplicate number. The significance of not null is in order to not leave that in order not to leave that column as an empty. So this is how we are creating the table. Create table name, and then the field value and the data type. How many fields we are creating here? We are creating here 3 fields. One is id field, and the other one is name field, and the other one is the salary field. Now using MySQL underscore query, this is the method. that takes the two arguments. Con argument, what this con argument contains, with the earlier discussion we represented, con is the argument. Con argument contains connection value, whether it is being successfully connected to database, that is represented with the con argument. Now this MySQL underscore query will execute will execute the SQL query on the connected database. Upon successful execution, this total method returns to true when MySQL underscore query method gets executed. The total value returns to true. If the condition true, then we are displaying that table EMP5 created. What is the table name? EMP5. The table is created successfully. If anything goes wrong, when it goes wrong means when the connection is not established, or when there is any syntactical or semantics error with the SQL argument, then the if condition is evaluated to false, and then we will be moving to the else part stating that could not create the table. So in order to know what is the error, why it is not able to create the error, we are using method with the SQL environment, that is MySQLi underscore error. It is the method which describes whether there is any error with regarding to connection attribute. CONN is the con which contains the connection result, whether where the error occurs is the error occurs with regarding to connections, so that if there is error related to any SQL, if there is any error related to connecting to databases, those are displayed by using MySQLi underscore error. So if at all there is no error, if condition is evaluated to true, and we will be displaying table EMP5 created successfully and then closing the database. So if we executing this program, we will be creating a database in the we will be creating a table in the database. After creating a table in the database, what the next step is, we need to insert values to the table. So in order to insert values to the table, what we have been using, what is the SQL query? That is the insert query. Insert table name values of. So we will be using insert query to insert the values into table. So with the databases we learn insert query. What is insert query? Insert into table name and then fields. What are the fields that are having, and then entering the values to the fields. So first we need to connect to database. Up to here, connecting to the database. After the database is connected successfully, so now we are having a database created, and then we are having a table created in it. So every program must start with connecting to database. So this is how we are been connecting to the database. These steps are common to all the programs in all the database programs. Some for starting from PHP to MySQL, that is echo connected successfully. Up to these are all the common steps for all the PHP database programs. After that, what we need is, we need to identify whether it is insert query, whether it is update query, whether it is delete query, whether it is create query, whether it is creating table. Like that, we need to identify what is the SQL query we need to execute, and we need to take that SQL query into a variable called, that is we need to take that SQL query into we need to take that SQL query into SQL variable or an SQL argument. This SQL argument, now as we need to insert values into the table, we are taking this SQL argument with the insert query. So what is insert query? Insert into table name, and these are the fields of the table, and then values. What are the values that we have been giving? These are the two values, Sono and then 9000 are the values to enter into the database. So in order to execute this query, what is the method? As discussed, we are having only one method, that is MySQL I underscore query. It is the only method. Adokate method. It is the only method for the entire PHP programs to execute SQL queries. So now using the same method, MySQLi underscore query, It takes two arguments, connection argument and SQL argument. Connection argument will hold the connection to the database. SQL argument will execute an SQL query. So when this MySQL underscore query method executes successfully, then the if condition is evaluated to true, then we will be displaying the message record insert successfully. So if anything goes wrong here, if anything goes wrong, that is if there is any errors with regarding to connection, or if there is any errors with regarding to SQL query, then we will be displaying the error message could not insert record, and there is any error with regarding to connection, we will be displaying that error with regarding to MySQLi underscore error. So with this we can insert the values to the database. So what now, up to now what happens is we are creating database, a table is created. Inside the table, now using a PHP environment, we are inserting the values into that table. So you need to open XAMPP server, you have to execute that XAMPP, you have to start Apache and you have to start MySQL, and then you have to open the edit plus window, you have to write this program and you have to execute with the PHP environment. After execution, you can find the results of these programs. Okay, now after inserting, what is the thing is we need to update. Suppose if we want to change the value, suppose earlier I have entered a value 9000, now if I want to insert the value as 8000, something like 80,000, like this, what is the query we will be using? We are using update query. So what is update query? Update set field name and then the value. Update table set field name, the field name is set with the value. So the same process continues here. So you remember, first connecting to the database, if you understand connection to the databases, those are the common steps involved in every PHP program. The same thing, when creating a table, we have used these steps, PHP to echo. When inserting the values to the table, we have used these steps, PHP to echo statement. Now for also updation, we are using the same statements, PHP to echo, because each and every query, either you have to write a SQL select query, either you have to write insert query, either you have to write update query. Whatever the query you need to execute, the first major thing you need to do is you must have to be connecting to the database. So these are the primary steps in connecting to the database. Every program contains it, whether it may be your program with select, whether your program may be with insert, the program may be with update. Whatever the program it is, every PHP program to databases, or every PHP program with databases must have these connecting statements. So now the same with taking SQL command. SQL command is provided with update query. Update table name set value equals to, and then from where we need to set the value. Now I am taking a field called name, a field called salary, a field called ID. What are the fields I am having? I am having three fields in the table: ID field, name field, salary field. So taking the values for those three fields, taking a variable ID with 2, taking a variable name with Rahul, taking salary 80,000. Now using update query, set name equals to, what is the name, how the name has to change, the name field has to change with this value, so that set name equals to /of s name. Now again the field salary, $salary, and then where ID, to which record I need to change. I need to change with the record with the ID 2, then where ID equals to SID. This is the SQL query for updating the data in the table. Update table name, set field name equals to value. With that, what happens is, whatever the value we are having, that value will be updated with the provided field name in that particular table. So that is the SQL query. Now using MySQLi underscore query method, we are executing the query. So that is the common method for executing the queries. MySQLi underscore query, connection argument and SQL argument. Using these two arguments, the SQL query gets executed, and the condition, if condition is evaluated to true, the record gets updated. So this is how we will be updating the values in a table, whatever the tables are. Similarly, when we need to select, this is the major operation. After inserting the values, what are the two major operations we are doing on database is, one is inserting the form values, inserting the values from form to database, or reading the values from database to form. So in order to read the values from the database, what the query we are using is the select query, select star from emp4. Whatever the emp4 is the table name, whatever the data in the table is having, that is how many rows it may be. Table contains, if the table contains 3 rows, the 3 rows are fetched, the data in the 3 rows are fetched and then displayed. So this is how we have been representing here, $sql, and then here taking a variable called retrieval. This is a variable, just taking a name for my understanding purpose. I am taking it as a variable retrval, that is retrieval. Retrieval means retrieval, retrieving the data from the database. So now what is the purpose of taking this value is, I am evaluating the MySQL underscore query with the SQL method. What is the SQL method? Select star from. So when I use the select query, what it does is it fetches the number of records in the table. That means earlier the MySQL underscore query returns either a value true or false for inserting. If the query gets, if the insertion query is true, then it returns a true value. MySQL underscore query, when creating a table, if that creating table query is successful, it returns a value true. If it is successful, if it is false, it returns a value false. So true or false are denoted with the numbers 0 and 1. Whether 0 remains for false, 1 remains for true in earlier cases. That is, for example, moving back, suppose if I want to delete records here, I am writing here MySQL underscore con underscore SQL. Now what happens here, delete query, when this particular ID is deleted, when that particular ID is deleted, what happens is, sorry, one second. Sorry students, one second. See here, when this MySQL underscore query is evaluated, here SQL query is create table. If that SQL query is executed successfully, it returns 1, or if it is not successful, it returns 0. Here in all these methods, similarly in all these programs, similarly here also to insert, when I use this MySQL underscore query, here also it returns a value 1 if the insert query is successful, or if the insert query is not successful, it returns the value 0. Same with the update also. But whereas coming to a select query, when this MySQL underscore query executes an SQL statement with a select query, it returns a number which is greater than 0. It is not a 0 or 1. It may be 1, it may be 2, it may be 3. That is what it is, the number of data, the number of rows available in the table. Now at this time it counts the total number of rows in the table. For that I am taking a variable retrval. This variable contains the total number of rows in a table. Now what I am doing is, now after that, now I got 3 rows in the table. I did not got a select query is successful. I did not got a insert query is successful like that. I did not got that select query is successful. I got a number, a 3 rows. I got a number 3. So now what I have to do is, if it is greater than 0, now I need to fetch the data in the in these 3 rows. So for that, to fetch the data in the 3 rows, what I am doing is I am using a while loop. So while loop, you know what while loop is. While loop is while loop is a looping statement which repeatedly executes. So now using while loop, I am repeatedly reading each and every column value from the table. 3 rows are there. 3 rows have 3 fields. Now read the value from the each and every field. So now using while loop, while $row equals to MySQL fetch associative of retrieval. That is whether first row, $row equals to fetching the first row. Now fetching the first row, $row equals to 1, then read the first value. $row equals to 2, read the second value. $row equals to 3, read the third value. When after successful completion of these retrieval number, then what happens is it returns -1. Then -1, while -1 becomes condition false, and then we come to the end of the loop. So that is what here is, what here we are representing is. So with this retrieval, with this MySQL underscore query, we are identifying the number of rows in a table. Now from that number of rows, we need to take the data. That is, suppose 3 rows are there: employee 1, employee 2, employee 3. 3 employee details are there. Now this while loop, $row equals to this entire statement, what it retrieves is, it retrieves row 1, row 2, row 3, row 5, row 6, like this. How many number of rows we are having, it retrieves those data. When there are no rows, when all the rows retrieving is completed, then it returns value -1. Up to that, the while loop will goes on executing. So now while row 1 reads row 1 details. Again, when coming to end of while, when it comes to end of while, when while becomes -1, it comes out of the while loop. So until the while becomes -1, it goes on repeating, executing the statements, reading values from first row, second row, third row continuously. After all the rows completed, then this while loop is evaluated to -1, and then we come to the end of the while. Then we will be closing the statement. This is how we will be displaying all the results. Using the select query, we will be displaying all the results. So after select query, suppose this is a nominal query. Most probably we will not be using it in all the cases, but one more query is the deleting record from the table. As simply what we are doing is delete from table which row we need to delete. So I am having 3 rows: employee 1, employee 2, employee 3, employee 4, employee 5. Like that I am having more than one employee details. Among those employee details, which employee details I need to delete, such that I am giving where id equals to $id. So suppose here I am taking a variable id with 2. Means I need to delete an employee id, employee 2 details, employee id with 2, such that what I am doing, delete from emp4 where id equals to 2. Now what happens, this query executes, it deletes the record. It is only one particular transaction, performing on one transaction, so it returns either 0 or 1. If 1, record deleted successfully. If evaluates to 0, then it displays the error. What is the error with regarding to connection? It displays that error message. So after deleting our desired record, then we will be closing the database. These are all the 4 transactions, these are all the queries that we are executing on the database. So with this we conclude the databases. So listen to the video 2 to 3 times, such that you can understand the queries. Each and every program has been clearly described in the video. Open your XAMPP server, open your Edit Plus window, type the programs and execute, either in Zoom, either when coming to Zoom meeting, or either in WhatsApp. You can ask if there are any doubts with regarding to these programs. Okay, we will be discussing later with the XML topics in the next session.